Okay, guys,
We're live.
We're live. Hi, guys.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
We're Red.
Welcome to Red. I'm Steve,
And I'm Nancy.
and we're going to be revisiting tools and materials for this edition of Summer Development Camp.
Yeah, and we've got a bunch of really great guests. We've got Nathan at the Da Vinci Center in Stockton, California. Gail representing the Keene Public Library, which is one of our tool lending libraries. Goto in Nashville, Tennessee. He represents Project Mock. Emily at the Thinkery in Austin, Texas. Brian, Anna, and Nora at the Millvale Library in Millvale, Pennsylvania. They're our other tool lending library.
Right on.
Yeah.
What a great variety we have.
I know. I'm really excited to jump into this discussion. So we're going to start off actually with our tool lending libraries just briefly talking about their projects. So which one of y'all want to start?
Hey, guys,
we're live.
We're live. Hi,
Whoa.
guys.
We got feedback here.
Yeah, somebody will have to mute there, and you might have a separate window going on. Maybe one of you is logged in Summer Development Camp.
Yeah, so we've got a really great guest. We've got Nathan at the Da Vinci Center in Stockton, California. Gail representing the Keene Public Library, one of our tool lending libraries.
We're having problems.
Goto in Nashville, Tennessee.
Close the YouTube window.
Oh, there we are.
That's good.
Okay.
This happens in us all the time.
It's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's hear about these tools.
Oh, man.
What's a great concept?
Yeah.
All right, who wanted to start? Keene or Millvale?
Both of y'all are tool.
Tell us about your tool program. Go.
Oh, let's Gail.
Go, Gail.
Okay, I'll go. But we are just starting a tool lending library.
Perfect. That's what we want to hear about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
How did you
I think Millville. I think they're a little bit ahead of us. What we've done is
right.
once we decided we wanted to do this, and I've asked for input. We did a survey and asked our patrons what they would like. And the results from that so far were a little surprising. They aren't asking for the most expensive tools, but they're asking for maybe the kind of things that you don't buy unless you're really into it, like rotary cutters or mat boards. They didn't ask for the sewing machine. They asked for those things that are the second tier. But we have a real focus. Unlike a lot of tool lending libraries, I want our tools to be used by families. So not so much like the construction tools that other libraries have. I want ones that they can make things at home, the kind of things that we're doing. So I've looked at, I know at one of these hangouts, Steve talked about those kits that he was developing about making spaces on the go, like little buckets or something. Yeah. So that's sort of the way I'm approaching it, so that we might have a kit about, electronic sewing, and it would have the tools that you would need and maybe some materials, but not too much. And so they would check it all out in a book that would tell you how to do it, and they would check it all out and they would work at home.
So sort of themed possibility boxes in a sense.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Can you give us an example of some of the tools that you're excited to offer for this family-focused effort that you have?
Well, as we are buying tools ourselves for that summer, I'm thinking about, we just bought a sewing machine. So I just thought it's making that. I was thinking the sewing machine, but really I was surprised that most people, they haven't said a sewing machine. They wanted those extra things, which we didn't buy yet. We went with the sewing machine first. So,
and what would those things be?
Like the rotary cutter and the board to help you cut things out. Those extra tools.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So.
We're excited to see what comes out of that.
I love watching the process.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Feedback starts to happen. Emily's got a question there.
Yeah. Are those things to check out totally free?
Oh, that's the challenge, yes. Everything we will always do at the library's got to be free.
Right.
So, yeah.
And then
that's why we don't want to put too many
materials.
I'm sorry?
That's why you're not
Yeah,
putting
that's why I don't want to put a whole lot of materials in it. Plus, because it's hard for us to restock the kit.
Right.
Yeah, like if it had markers in it, it would be hard for us to make sure there were always markers in it.
Right. But you can have that list of things that you recommend to be used,
Yeah,
and
that makes
encourage
sense.
developing your own set of materials to work with various toolkits.
Right.
Are there things that you're worried about being dangerous to check out? Like a rotary cutter would be one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's also really expensive to replace the blades, but is that something you're...
Well, we sort of have a, I mean, of course it's something we think about, and I know our director is probably more concerned about it, is the most concerned about it, but we already check out a telescope, and we have a contract that parents have to sign saying they're not going to look at the sun. And you wouldn't think you would have to tell somebody that, but yeah, I guess you do. But unfortunately, when people read that, everybody wants to look at the sun. But so that's what we'll have. They're not going to check out to kids themselves because they're to be used with a group of kids and adults. So they're going to go out to the adults to be used with kids, and we will share the information and maybe have people sign something. They're more expensive too. They're going to be more expensive to borrow, to replace. So just for that, we want to have people sign that they're aware.
Yeah, and I have a recommendation. You've likely thought of this, but when you have tools that are used and checked out constantly, it really pays to pay for at least a mid-tier level.
Yes.
Say the difference between something made in China versus Taiwan. You will, in the long run, save a lot of money, and the tools themselves will be safer because they won't break as easily. But likely look into that.
Yeah.
Shall we hear from Millville?
Let's hear from
the comparative veterans.
Well, veterans is a relative term.
Comparative, exactly.
So our process really grew naturally out of what we've been doing for about the last year, which is having a make shop program here at the library. And in doing so, we've had tools that kids just naturally use on a regular basis, and any of our patrons that come in. Additionally, our library itself, we built it. It's like 5 years of volunteers getting together, like just building it ourselves. And through that process, is sloppy, crazy process, there were tools laying around everywhere. And so we just started gathering those together and saying this is something we're going to want to use through the community and what we continue to do here. And really, it's been with the ability of having the Maker Corps members working with us this summer that we've actually been able to organize and start to get ready to launch our tool lending library. So it's very much at the beginning as well. And we've seen some things with Anna and Nora can tell the story better than I, but I know some of the things, like they do a Tuesday program around bicycles, and a lot of kids come in for Allen wrenches and for for different pliers and things to fix and recreate and work on their bikes with. And I know one of the things that we're in talking to the folks at Toronto at the library there, they do a really nice tool lending library. They said their most well-used and checked-out item is the pressure washer, and people checking things out and just washing their decks, their homes, whatever it might be. As bizarre as that sounds, we're definitely, say, most of our collection is low-tech at this point, a lot of hand tools. We are looking at moving into trying to get more electric tools and everything like that. But Anna and Nora have really been carrying the load, so I'll zip my lips and let them talk about what's happening.
Yeah.
Well, currently, I know that Nora's spent a while inventorying all the current tools that we've gotten donated and whatnot. We made a brochure and sent it around the borough that we're working in and requested tools, and we got a lot of optimistic response and a couple toolboxes of rusty tools, right?
Yeah, I mean it's hard with the donations because we don't really have anything specific that we need. We need everything.
Right.
So people have just been dropping off, the boxes of stuff that have been in their basement for however long they've lived in the house, and they haven't used it since they, fixed that one patch on the ceiling. And it's been a lot of digging through stuff, deciding what's worth keeping, deciding what we might need in the future, and what we're obsessively holding on to for no reason. And you know, looking at barrels of rusted hardware and thinking like, is anyone gonna want this?
Yes,
And,
I love those.
Yeah.
Well, what I would say about that is since we've inventoried all this stuff, it gives us a lot of opportunity to now request specific tools. We've already worked with we just actually got out of a meeting earlier today working with a pop-up marketing firm to kind of design the logo and design a press release so we can get the rest of the city of Pittsburgh interested in bringing us tools. I mean, when we say a request for all tools, people don't really know what we want, but now we're asking for sewing machines, we're asking for soldering irons, just kind of going across the whole map of tools and taking a lot of, a lot of influence from like the Berkeley Tool Lending Library. The Seattle has some software, some web-based software that we can use for memberships and things like that. So there's a lot of good resources on the web that are really helping me and Nora feel confident about establishing this in a month and a half.
And also something, what we talked about this morning was like putting the emphasis on the DIY movement and like the maker movement and the tools you would associate with that. So kind of moving away from like what we were saying earlier is like not having so much of the construction stuff and having more like, you know, circular saws, sawzall, things that you can use in your house and your we were talking about maybe having a lawnmower, you know, things that you can use around the house that maybe people in the community don't have the opportunity to buy, have the space to store, and would make like a good addition to the tool lending library.
And I wanted to touch on one issue that came up before, and that was in regards to money and costs. Our approach to it is we're looking at this as sort of the threshold of the price of a new hardback book. We don't charge people when they check out our new hardback books, and we're not going to do that with any tools that would be valued under that amount. However, if it's above that, say, $25 threshold, we are going to look at a deposit or maybe a small fee that would be associated with it. And that's just an approach that we're taking as we look at more things that are going to be of more value and are going to be harder to replace and things like that. So
I guess one thing I would add is the money thing is going to really have to be something we iron out, like the prices, how we do memberships. But another thing that you brought up is the liability, because if we're going to be allowing people to look at the sun with a really, powerful device, as in your tool lending library, we have to figure out some way to create some membership that you have a qualification. So you're qualified using the search saw, you're qualified using this. Like a fishing license is something we were thinking about earlier. So there's different kind of qualifications you can get for your membership. But that's going to be a big challenge for us, I think, is the liability aspect, too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your tool lending space inspiration, and you can revisit these issues as we move on to other questions here. I would love to get to the point where we actually start to talk about our go-to tools, and we can start with the folks we haven't heard from yet about.
What is your go-to tool?
What is your go-to tool?
Do you have one?
Or a go-to tool.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be one, but so what is one of many that you find yourself using, or something that's a little bit unexpected? Anybody have some examples to share of go-to tools?
I guess I'll go first.
Yeah.
I have a couple that I don't step out of the house with. One of them would be this innocuous-looking device. It's a pen. Well, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's a screwdriver.
Yeah.
And it's also a screwdriver on the other side. And I don't know if I could do it, but these guys. Anyways, there's little screwdrivers in here.
Yeah.
So flathead, little flathead, and a little Phillips, and then a big flathead and a big Phillips. And these guys have, I want to say, literally saved my life. I mean, maybe not quite that much, but
So
there's some brownie points with people.
Yeah.
Then the other one would be a pen. And I said this the last time we were in this type of hangout. But you really can't get away from, a pen. I mean, yeah, you can write on paper, you can write on cardboard, you can write it in the back of your hand, but you always have something to take down a note with, or like how many screws there are supposed to be, and you wind up with an extra one, and you're like, where did this come from? I don't know. Or like you draw a diagram of where they go, or just different numbers that for measurements.
That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
that's fantastic.
Cool.
Go Cool, do you have a go-to tool?
Goto tool.
I think my hands. That's it.
Yeah, why not? Original tool, right? That's cool. Okay. Emily, a go-to tool?
Yeah, I have two I wanted to share as well. One of ours that's one of my favorite things, and I could not run my space without it, is this particular pair of scissors from IKEA. And I wrote their name down so people can get them. It's the Trolcha kitchen scissors from IKEA. They're $2 each. So they're these heavy-duty kitchen shears. And, again, they're $2, so, like, go out and get some. They're great for when we do design challenges or recycled material builds. They really cut through, like, yogurt cups or plastic containers or big pieces of cardboard really easily, and we'll totally let the kids use them as well. And so that's definitely one of ours, and we just have boxes of them. And then the other one, which I didn't bring up here, but is a pull saw. So instead of a push saw or a box saw, like a European box saw, we have, entirely switched over to using their Japanese pull saws. You can get them at Harbor Freight for cheap.
Yeah,
You can get them you can get them around $15 or $20 at Home Depot or order them online, and they're so great. They do their cutting on the pull instead of the push. So when kids are first learning how to saw, they want to just push down so hard, and the blade often bends, and they're fighting against themselves. So with the pull saws, they can really cut through. It's not like butter, but once they get the motion, it's just so much easier. So those are two things we definitely rely on a lot here.
Yeah, and the pull saw is a great way to teach precision.
Yeah. Well, they have a very small, what's known as a kerf.
Yep.
The amount of wood that's actually removed is very narrow. So you save material, and you can actually have very precise joints. So they're made in all sorts of beautiful Japanese traditional joinery, as well as other things. Yeah, I love it. You ever want to remind yourself how hard it is for some kids to saw for the first time with traditional saws? Saw with your non-dominant hand, blindfolded, and you'll be reminded of how awkward it can be. But it's a power. It's a very empowering thing for them to learn. So, other go-to tools from any other site? Our MakerCore members are.
Well, I bike around Pittsburgh a lot, and I don't ever leave my house without a multi-tool. If you guys are familiar with them, they usually consist of like a little thing this big, and it has all the Allen wrenches you need, a screwdriver, a chain breaker, and I have a tire lever on mine, which is pretty cool. And it just is something that I can fix my bike with, or I can fix most things on my bike with that at any time. So that's useful for me.
A lot of other people's bikes with that as well. So.
Yeah, of course. Bike Tuesdays here. Yeah. Everyone uses it. So I bought one finally for the library because I just really cool. Kept on forgetting it here.
Yeah. I would say my sewing machine.
Oh, whoops.
Go ahead.
Who mentioned the sewing machine?
That was me.
Okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah, sewing machine. Awesome.
That you carry with you, right?
Because it's small, and I put it in my pocket. But I don't buy clothes that often, so every time anything rips or I have to patch something, I use my sewing machine.
Yeah.
And so it's been fun working with the kids on the sewing machine because I know how to fix it, and I know I know how to if a kid breaks a needle, if I can find them, I can usually replace it. So it's good. It's been a good thing to work with them with. It's been fun.
Yeah. Besides that, scissors would be a big one for us at the Keene Public Library too. Any kind of scissors, but also rulers and for measuring things, and hammers would be another one we go to.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice. Brian, did you have any go-to tools?
My brain is fried, so I could use like a brain recharger.
That's okay.
One of those, I would appreciate that.
Okay.
My usual go-to tool is
we got those.
Is really just my computer. I don't go many places without it, much to my wife's chagrin. This is my thing. It's my baby. So, yeah.
Nice.
I have another one.
Okay.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I just remembered. Round nose pliers. instead of not just needle nose pliers, but the actual jewelry round nose ones for wrapping LEDs, doing the little ends on tiny wire work, but especially for LEDs and electronics, sewable, textile, electronic stuff, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put it back up on the camera.
Really cool. So like the rounded profile when you look at it.
Yep.
Yeah. That's cool.
These are all really fantastic.
I got a couple just real quick analog tool, Goto Tools. I'm really fond of these hobby cutters that allow you to cut tubing, both plastic and metal. They're really fun for kids because you can make very precise cuts of tubes of different kinds. Just kind of, for example, if you cut through a pen in a very precise way, it's difficult to do with shears without bending it. But if you wanted to keep the integrity of the roundness here, you just kind of rotate this through, and then you tighten it a little bit, and you rotate it through, and pretty soon you cut through the tube. They're very inexpensive, and they can work with copper tubing. I use it when I build furniture out of copper tubing all the time to actually cut very precise lengths of tubing. So I love these. They come in all sorts of sizes. And
what was that called again? What are those called?
These are like rotary cutter, hobby cutters. What is the term for these? They're definitely found very often in hobby shops. But I'll think of the technical term in a second.
Yeah, we'll remember.
Yeah. The other one, when it comes to cutting PVC or wooden dowels or things, there's this ratchet cutter right here, which is really fun to introduce to kids because this has the power to take off a finger, and if you introduce it as such, the kids feel honored to use it, and they're very careful and respectful with it, because what it does is you cut, and it only goes one way. It ratchets. Every time you cut, it makes a, it just goes in and doesn't go out. Very quickly, you've got something, a whole entire PVC pipe cut through very smoothly and cleanly. Dangerous as heck, but can be responsibly like any tool once you actually kind of ask how might you use this in a responsible way of children. So that's enough for now.
Yeah, well,
got more tools.
we're going to go into our final question because time goes by so quickly. I was hoping that our guests should share some stories about how you might introduce a new tool.
Yeah, and just because we want to take advantage of Project Mock being on right here, and we had Brian mention that the computer is a primary tool, I wonder if Gokul, you could tell us a little bit about Project Mock and tool use, and how you might actually be, because of where you're at, as people will find out in a second, how digital tools might complement analog tools.
So I think the whole hospital, the children's hospital setting, there's so many tools within that setting itself. And within a patient's room, there's so many materials, there's so many tools. And so we have in these mobile maker spaces, you have different materials. But we also ask kids in the hospital to scavenge for materials within the hospital. So we don't want to give the kids all the materials. So one of the kids in the hospital, he's actually our advisor. So this is a makerspace designed by the patients for the patients. And so I just spoke to him yesterday, and he said, if you give us everything, it wouldn't give us the opportunity to leave our bed and go outside. Us and talk to people. And so we're leaving gaps in our space where hey, you have to go and find these materials. So the kids have to talk to nurses and doctors and staff and find different materials. So allowing kids to find materials is a perfect way for them to get involved in making something which is meaningful to them. Because if you give them everything, it just doesn't become as meaningful to them. But when they find something which is relevant to their making, it just does wonders. And so it's just not about the specific tools, but it's about what you can actually do with it. What can you make that's meaningful? And so giving them the options, but also I think the mind is the best tool. So using your mind to be really creative, and just not the tools.
So much better said by you than me. Well, that reminds me of Gail's approach. It's like by necessity you can't provide all the materials, but that might become like a strength. It's a challenge. Like, what do you already have? What can you get in your neighborhood? There's a really nice way of utilizing the tools that are materials that are already out there, especially because there's tons of materials being underutilized that will normally get thrown away. So,
can I just say one thing quick? So I don't know if it's a tool, but it's storytelling is a tool of explaining what you've done. So we tell kids to tell stories about what you've made. So using like tablets or something, or like books, they write down stories. So I think storytelling is a perfect tool to explain what you've made and what you've done. So
Yeah.
That's really amazing work, Go Cool. You know, helping kids, they're in a space that it gives them something else to focus on and to concentrate on rather than their sickness or their healing or why they're there, and that's really awesome work.
thank you.
It really is. I used to work in children's hospitals for decades, actually, volunteering, and the mental state of a child, especially those that are in there for long periods of time, whether they have CF, cystic fibrosis, or are on the cancer mend, their mental state is everything, and most of those children are bored to tears no matter what's available in the hospital. So Go Cool is showing what's possible. Whatever you do for a children's hospital setting is extensible to other settings where kids are like maybe confined or trapped, like a lot of schools, unfortunately.
Yeah.
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 Go Cool. Have you had success in using some digital tools in particular when you don't have an option to put a card in the room? Do some of these students get pads or computers to use sometimes?
Yeah, so they use, so the different kinds of materials that we've used is the kids use iPads, and sometimes they use their own iPhones and stuff like that, because a lot of the kids have iPhones and their own kinds of computers, but the materials like Little Bits is quite popular with the kids. Squishy circuits. Kids love Play-Doh. I think Play-Doh is the most popular thing. And so they use different kinds of like digital materials, but what I've seen is the physical materials that they find is more important than whatever those digital materials are. And so this just goes back all the way to like Montessori schools where those physical materials like supported learning so much. And so there's so many kinds of materials that they use just within their space, like in the IV tubes. They just like figure out like ways of like using that in something that they've made, and so I think it's just making them like more aware that materials are actually all around. It's just not what we provide, and it's fascinating what they find. Like juice cups are really popular. They use like juice cups and tissue papers and so many kinds of materials.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And we're getting a 3D printer for kids in the room, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. I love that because the 3D printer is a tool that doesn't necessarily have to be there physically in order for them to use it. They can be designing on their pad or designing on their computer. And then the thought I had the other day was, what if they welcomed other children to the hospital with something custom made for them? They interviewed the kid about their interests, and they built something custom for that kid, like a welcome to the welcome here. This is what you love. There's a big culture of mashing things together in 3D print space, where they can take, I love lobsters and airplanes and glow-in-the-dark stuff. You can make a glow-in-the-dark lobster airplane, right? And or whatever. But I love that idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we have any? Sorry to switch topics. Do we have any stories about introducing a tool? Let's go to the. Or let's go to, I was going to say MakerCore members, but Emily, any stories about introducing a new tool at the Thinkery?
Yeah, a lot of times when we're introducing tools, it's the first time our staff or volunteers have used them too. So if we have time beforehand to show them, all of the facets of the tool, how it's going to be used, how the kids are going to use them, I think that's really helpful. And then I like to anticipate what the challenges the kids are going to have. If it's a power tool, it's heavy, they're going to be surprised when you pull the trigger back, how much how fast it goes. So one of the things that we do with our power drills is I'll have the kids just hold them in the air, not be drilling, and I'll say, pull the trigger slowly, and then go all the way back, so that they're just holding it in the air, drilling into the air, so that they're not surprised when they're actually drilling, how much torque it has, how they're going to, it's not going to surprise them. And then they're ready to use it. And we'll have, our volunteers and our staff go through that at the beginning too, because it's always different. And even if you've used tools before, they feel different. So just really familiarizing yourself with the space and the elements before having to use it in practice.
That's a really good tip.
It is, and not only a great tip, but also far safer, right? And empowering. And empowering for that child. Whenever I introduce tools, I like to give that child a chance to introduce it to another child instead of me. So that becomes this culture of children sharing and introducing each other the safe tool use. And an interesting propagation factor I notice is that whenever a child introduces a tool to somebody else and then another person, it gets safer and safer every time because they pile on more, like, and you got to watch out about this and you got to watch out about that. Instead of becoming less safe, it becomes like this safety explosion.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Other ways and stories of introducing tools to children for the first time, or even adults.
Well, I was working with some younger kids in my apartment complex, I think about a week ago, and we were using a hot glue gun. And I heard back when I was in Maker Core, someone put like some teeth around feather boa, hot glue gun feather boa. Yes, they put some little teeth around the hot part of the nozzle. To kind of denote that it's a little bit scary and you shouldn't really touch it because it will bite. And so that's I kind of told a story about a hot glue gun, how it kind of represents a shark. There were kind of teeth on mine, and so the students understood that I shouldn't really touch it, but it wasn't just like don't touch it, it's hot. It's like don't touch it because it's gonna bite.
Yeah.
And they were really, I kind of, again, like Steve said, that they shared that with each other. And as I had some students just kind of pop in the middle of it, like, hey, don't touch it. Okay, I'm done here. We can go on and build. So I just, a story is nice. Like when I introduce breadboards, I tell my students that you can eat them. They don't believe me. So they don't. It's just a funny way to make a connection with them.
That's great.
A story is always nice. Like Go Cool was saying, a story is a really powerful tool, and stories about tools, I don't know, just kind of toolception.
Yeah.
I so love that our conversation about tools and materials went in that story and mind direction. It's a beautiful reminder, and the hand direction as well. So it's a beautiful reminder that no matter what we say about tools and materials, the ones we always have with us are the most powerful. Voices, if you have it, brain, hands, pen to write things down on. The simplest possible things are the most elegant and useful.
Yeah. Cool. This is actually time to wind down.
It really is. It's sad because I love these conversations. We could wind, but we're trying to stay religiously within this 30-minute boundary. Keep these episodic and close fit. Giving us a lot to think about. And we could do easily Tools and Materials Part 3.
I know. We can have this conversation for hours and hours.
Fortunately, continue this conversation on the community. And also, if you don't mind, if you say something or post a resource, post it also on our Maker Ed community, which is publicly available. You can find that on makered.org/community. So that we can kind of, over time, build up those ideas you guys have shared. Like Feather Boys from the Tech Museum of Innovation in San Jose last year, which were a big hit with the Maker Core.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much to our guests. We had Da Vinci Center. Thank you so much, Nathan. The Keene Public Library. Thanks, Gail. Thanks for sharing your stories. Go Cool in Nashville, and with Project Mock, you should definitely look up because it's such an amazing, amazing project. Thanks, So Cool. Emily from the Thinkery in Austin, Texas. Thank you so much for sharing your tools. And the Millvale Community Library, Brian, Anna, and Nora. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Fun, guys.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you all. And if you want to hang out for just a 5-minute discussion afterwards, you too. We're going to stop the broadcast now. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
This was fun.